Welcome, Jane and Grace.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Are you folks ready to vote tomorrow? Are you participating in a primary?
I will be.
Okay.
I will be there the whole day for a school board race.
Oh, are you running or
No,
you're
I'm not.
supporting
I'm not
someone this
running,
time?
but our school board has lost their mind, so we're trying to reel it back in. So we have a nonpartisan group trying to bring sanity back.
Good deal. Good job. And so, what's the situation? They're a nonpartisan group, but it's primary day. Are they running as a
Our
party?
folks are cross-filed, so we did this we did it
Generation of
2 years
white
ago.
entitlement and privilege, all encapsulated in one single simpering grin.
Not sure
Hearing
whose
what that woman
audio is
said
coming
today,
through.
prostrating and presenting like he's some sort of savior for our people.
Okay. I'm sorry. What were you saying about the cross
So
filing
two
for the
two
school?
years ago, we tried and we lost the majority. So it was like the Moms for Liberty group took over our school. So we've made the news for some crazy decisions, and so we're back at it again with the nonpartisan group, uh, trying to get sanity back. So
Cool. And so strategically, they cross file to
yeah,
hopefully
so
get
so
nominated.
all four candidates cross-filed. We have two Republicans, two Democrats, a good group of people uh trying to get these four people elected. So we're hopeful.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Thank you all for joining. Rafe, I want to introduce Rafe if you haven't met him before. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and I think you can kick off the meeting, right?
Happy to. Thanks, Brian. Hey, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar names. Nice to see you all. My name is Rafe D'Amico. Really pleased to be part of the team and joining as communications chair. Brian, has wanted to transition the position, and we've done that. He's still very much involved. We haven't fully transitioned all of the duties per se, but he's helping me with them as we kind of pick them up. And as are many people on this call. So we're figuring out what some of those tasks are and how we can make improvements, and most importantly, have more people become aware of the Ford Party and what we're looking to accomplish, and get as many new people to then join in the efforts that we have, because I think we've all seen the message and the story really resonates, and a lot of people are looking to accomplish similar things, but they just don't know how, or they don't know where they can be with like-minded people. So that's a big part of the effort, and I'm just really excited to be on board. So thank you. And I guess happy to answer any questions too, if anybody has any questions.
This is Grace. Hi.
Hi, Grace.
Well, this is my first time to join your calls. And I mean, I'm aware of the fact that, you're starting up this party. And I want to hear what you have to say. I want to see what what goals you have and what direction you're going. I feel as though you're kind of like what I'm looking for, I guess, is the middle of the road, somebody to like pave a path. And as the lady that was talking a few minutes ago, get rid of all the insanity.
Right.
And
So go ahead.
no, that's my purpose in being on the call tonight.
Yeah, so I think you touched on some really important keynotes there. It's wanting to find something that's middle of the road and to get rid of the insanity. I think middle of the road is something everybody can identify with, right? But get rid of the insanity can be a bit subjective and depends on where one sits on the political spectrum.
True.
And I think something that we've always tried to stress in the conversations, at least that I've been a part of, And I had some firsthand experience, as did a lot of people on the call, in some of the effort that we had to elect some forward candidates this last election cycle. And the thing that resonated people with the most was to not be stuck with the extreme choices that we have on the left or the right, to be a voice of reason in the sense that, like, more idea-based and not tribal party-based decisions, so that people can actually think for themselves, not be team blue or team red, and really be able to come from a point of consensus and have some civil discourse and civil dialogue on actual issues, versus party politics. So I could keep rambling on. I don't want to, I guess, have it turn into grandstanding, but I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of why we all are on these calls, and want to get the word out, and why, like I said, why the message resonates with people, and why they want to be a part of it. Because there aren't many options outside of the two parties that we have.
Right. Can you kind of, in a little nutshell for me, tell me some of the points that you have kind of come up with?
It's funny you mentioned that. We've been working on that, actually. And we've been bouncing an email around. I don't know, Brian, is that something that you maybe have handy, with some of the phrasing that we've been looking to agree on when we talk about our messaging, where I can dig it up?
The priorities document?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I've
Yeah.
received some of your emails where you're asking for opinions. And I just kind of felt like I was going to sit back a little and see what you were doing.
Yeah, so those emails come from Forward National. They're kind of separate. They let each state kind of define for themselves what their priorities are.
Okay.
We a little while ago put together a priorities document and have it posted on our website. I'll put it in the chat. But in general, like, a big part of what we support are electoral reforms that make the system better for independents and third-party candidates. So open primaries, for instance, has a lot of momentum in Pennsylvania right now.
Mhm.
And that's hopefully tomorrow is the last closed primaries Pennsylvania will host. So hopefully it'll be changed by next year.
Okay.
And Grace, were you able to see the link in the chat?
I did not.
So
Did you just send it to me?
So it's in the chat for everybody to see. If you go down to the nav bar that's
Okay.
on your Zoom screen, you'll see there's in the middle, there's a little chat button that you can click.
Oh, I see it.
And that'll open up the chat. And the top says Our Priorities PA Forward Party. If you click on that, that takes you to a link that Brian just referenced.
Okay. I think I might have it then. I'm not going to look at it while we're on the phone. I will look at it later on, because I'm not the best person with technology. So it could be a challenge. You might sit here all night till I get this figured out.
Well, and then hopefully you saw below that, Rachel was gracious enough to offer her some time with her one-on-one to set up a call to have a little bit more in-depth conversation.
Oh, okay. I see this. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, for sure. And that offer always stands. So like, it's always a struggle. We don't want to get on these monthly calls and rehash everything we've ever done, because then folks who call in a lot will have already heard it and lose interest. But we do have new people every month. And so it's great to capture your information or connect with any one of us on leadership. I happen to be on the executive committee, and then again, someone close to your geographic area, and be able to dive kind of deeper into like what you're really looking for, questions that you have. But this is probably good for everybody who's on the call, to hear. As far as the priorities document, that was probably a good first 6 to 12 months of work. And we were really starting out in 2022, figuring out what are the priorities in the state of Pennsylvania. So one of the forward concepts is that it's state and local driven, right? We're trying to make change here in our own backyard and locally. Pennsylvania has a unique opportunity because we are very similar to the US government, right? So it's a split legislature. We happen to have a Democratic governor, but we could easily have a Republican one next. And it's very close in the legislature. So figuring out what's important to us, who are candidates with align with what we feel is most important, because it really only takes 3 to 5, 5 to 10 commonly problem-solving individuals in the legislature or in Congress to make or break an agenda, to move or not move a policy. So it can be overwhelming to think like the Republicans, Democrats are so big and we're never going to become 51%. And that's really not what we're trying to start out with. That'd be wonderful one day, but just to be like the fulcrum of change, the voice of reason, get in the room where the conversations happen so that we can get away from the fringes and start like reasoning and talking and having that dialogue and getting solutions instead of just arguing. I don't know if that helps, but our priorities will be different than the priorities of Florida Forward Party or North Dakota Forward Party or California, because we decide.
Here's a concern that I have with any third party. I mean, I'm over 70 years old, so I've seen some third parties in my day, and I have always felt as though they just kind of mess it all up. Like you get to election day, and you know what I mean when I say mess it all up. And
I do.
they pull from the one that you might have wanted to win, and that's why I've always leaned against a third party.
Right. So that's not uncommon, and I don't want to hog the stage here, but like the spoiler effect, right? So that comes up, that's common, and people will shy away from, a new party or anything besides one of the majors, and they'll vote for the lesser of two evils or something. So part of Forward nationally, but also locally, is to improve like the way elections are run, things like ranked choice voting, independent redistricting committees. So independent redistricting committees. These are big in Pennsylvania because a lot of these races run either uncontested or unopposed because they've been gerrymandered to be just so red or so blue. Nobody puts out any effort. So if there's an 80-20 Republican, red county in Pennsylvania that's never given a good Democrat option, perhaps an independent has a chance to win Democratic independence and maybe center right. We have to sort of rethink the way it's worked in the past, starting from the bottom up and realizing that people are craving a change or an alternative like they never have before. And we never have ran like a presidential candidate. And it was certainly tempting last time, I'm sure, for national. Honestly, we don't have the say to do that. But they purposely, we're trying to build something sustainable and durable, and throwing out a Ross Perot or another independent, presidential candidate with no infrastructure underneath in the states to support it has failed. And it is only, with 9%, it's a resounding victory, but it's a spoiler. You're not wrong. So anyone else can jump in on that.
I'll shut up now. You guys talk.
I'd also like to jump in on the spoiler aspect. One of the things we want to try to focus on is also municipal races in Pennsylvania, many of which your local councils, what you will be voting on tomorrow, will be the top 3 vote getters will get the seats and get to go on to November, and the top 3 vote getters then will get the seats. There's no spoiler at all in those races. And then when we also want to focus on next year, the PA House, which has 203 seats, what are open to run, and half of which go uncontested, so that one of the other party doesn't even have an opponent in November. So no spoiler effect when we're going up against somebody without an opponent. And the PA House is where we have to go through to get the reforms Rachel talked about. So that's what we want to do mostly. And the only reason we would even attempt to run a statewide candidate would be to get minor party status. And I don't think we want to do that next year, frankly. I never say never, but that's kind of our strategy.
Do you feel as though the Forward Party leans left or leans right?
Neither one.
Well, I think that I don't think I mean, I'm just saying, without knowing anything, I don't think that would be a fair assessment. I'd have to feel as though somehow it leans 51% some way.
Yes, Grace, I think it would depend on what the particular issue is that we're talking about, right? So it's hard to pigeonhole the forward party to say it's always going to be on the left side of the spectrum or it's always going to be on the right side of the spectrum. And I think that's what we're actually trying to get away from, is where your voting or your stance on an issue is just because you are seeing yourself as aligned with the left or you're seeing yourself as aligned with the right. That's actually exactly what we're trying to get away from, is that sort of tribal mentality and partisan politics. It's to examine every issue on an ad hoc basis based off of like pragmatic ideas and pragmatic thinking to see how it impacts us locally. Because we are talking about the PA party here. So we're talking, and that's why I think Rachel did a really good job of eloquently describing the long-term.
I'm just listening to something.
The long-term perspective of really looking to build grassroots effort. So it can be hyper-local. And as that grassroots infrastructure is built within the party, then in time, there can actually be a national effort that is not just a spoiler, but actually has a powerful base and foundation to stand on, if that makes sense. Does that help answer the question? And I know I didn't answer it directly. It's because I don't think we can. So, but does that help give you, or at least paint a picture of how the view or what the lens is as far as if it leans left or leans right?
I do understand exactly what you're saying. The issues are separate and areas are separate and so on and so forth. I guess it's like anything, go back to college. Do you want to join this sorority or that sorority? Well, who are you? What are you about? And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right, and I think you're touching on some interesting aspects, at least psychologically. It's like, how do people identify? And if you're identifying with that sorority or with that team or with that tribe, then you're always going to want to vote a certain way. And again, I think those are some of the things that we're looking to get away from. David actually has his hand up and I think maybe can touch on some of this stuff too. So I'm going to ask David to unmute and maybe comment on some of this.
Thanks, Rafe. I just wanted to try to put it all in a nutshell, Grace. And by the way, welcome. We love when new people join us. You're probably getting the impression correctly from this conversation. It's difficult for us to put in a nutshell what the forward party is. Sometimes I find it easier to start with what the forward party is not. Let's contrast us with some of those other third parties that you mentioned. The Libertarian Party is a good example. They are all about small government. So any candidate who wants to run as libertarian has to at least pay big lip service to the idea of small government. And they have to at least go through the motions of acting like every problem can be solved by small government. Whereas the Forward Party doesn't have an ideological, strict framework like that requires all of our candidates to pretend that everything can be solved along a certain ideological path. We're trying to find those candidates who are more open-minded to more complex solutions and willing to work across party lines to accomplish those solutions. And unfortunately, candidates like that don't have a good support system right now. If someone wants to run as a Republican, they have to give lip service to all the Republican social issues. If they want to run as a Democrat, they have to give lip service to all of the Democrat social issues. We're trying to be the party that people can go to when they're more focused on solving the problems and working together than fundraising on the latest culture war BS.
Thank you.
I knew there was a reason I should ask David to speak here. I don't think we could have said it any better. Jeff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just kind of add in a little bit to that. If you actually look at the Ford Party and its basic beliefs, you'll find that it's much different than other parties in that it's built around values as opposed to policies. So if you go in and you listen, look at the main values that the party stands for. We stand for listening to one another, building solutions from the ground up. If you have, if you listen to people and you have candidates that listen to their constituents, then in any given time, people kind of move a little left, a little right, depending on where you are. That they may be a little more left, a little more right, but the point is that the party allows the candidate to represent their constituents, as opposed to us telling the candidate what specific policies they have to have. Now, the only thing that, as mentioned, as Ben mentioned, we do push for more fair elections, to give more opportunity. But the way I look at it is, if you have a candidate that can actually represent their constituents as opposed to a party, then we're back to how the government was really supposed to work to begin with. So that's another way to look at it.
Thanks.
Jane, you commented in the chat. Is there anything you wanted to share overall?
No, I mean, I liked seeing it. It was the first time I saw the whatever you called that paper, the important issue paper. But I struggle with the lack of positions. Like I support all the voter reform stuff, ranked choice voting, open primaries. I'm absolutely for that. But I have other things I care about, so it's hard to align myself with the part. And I've been following the Forward Party for probably close to a year, probably more than a year. But I mean, I've been involved in local politics for a while, and I'm just tired of the insanity, the nastiness, and the lack of solutions that we come up with. So I definitely am open to conversation and solutions, but I struggle with the lack of positions on issues.
Right. So I think the one common thread that we're all talking about here is the issues, if you will, that we're saying that we're united in standing for, like ranked choice voting, for example. These are all structural mechanisms with how government can function and how, like as Jeffrey said, how it can serve local constituents, which is very different than saying like a forwardist is always going to be X on a certain issue. Like whatever that issue might be. Like, so I don't think anyone's ever come out and said a forwardist is always going to be pro-life or pro-choice, right? Like if you talk about like one of the more contentious issues in most of the recent elections, right? So the idea is to provide the mechanism for government to function and to have conversations from the center, so that when a forwardist comes to be a candidate for a various position, they will certainly come out and say where they stand on those issues. So I don't want you to think that a forwardist is always going to run from where they stand on issues. A forwardist candidate is going to tell you exactly where they stand, and then you'll be able to make a decision with, is that somebody that you want to vote for to be in office? But the overall sort of like, hey, if I'm a forwardist, this is what I believe in. It's going to be more about the mechanism for government to function than what type of policy someone's going to believe in versus someone else's beliefs, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense, and I get that. It just yeah, I mean, I get that, like, you're supporting someone because they're centered in listening and making rational choices. And, and I'm sure a lot of people in the area, like, our candidates where we are now are extreme. And the more extreme, the more votes they get in the primary. And the primary is the winner of the election. So we just end up with a bunch of extremists. And it's hard to I don't know, it's hard to see the path forward for the forward party in the current state of elections right now. Just the way with the two-party system, it's hard to see. Like, I mean, I definitely agree that that needs to be, I guess, the primary initial focus.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're all here. That's why we're all talking, right? That's why I think we're all motivated to spend time on a Monday evening figuring out exactly how we can do that. Robert, you had your hand up.
Well, Rachel was first, but
I think it's just steadily up, or is it up again? I don't know if it went up and then down.
okay. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to run through some of the issues. So abortion, I guess, if we're mainly pro-choice, I guess, gun control, I would say most people, especially in Pennsylvania, if you listen to Eric Settle, I think if it was assault weapons ban somewhat, and maybe in that territory, but not completely take away all your guns. So just think more moderate. As far as immigration, I think we're pretty more firm than, let's say, the Democratic Party, but definitely not just this. Let's kick everyone out. All the anyone that's undocumented and whatnot. Compared to Trump. So if you want to try to go towards some of the issues, just think of the more. I think generally, I mean, this is just me talking, but I think we generally just try to be more sensible. So is there a particular policy that you kind of want to know our stance on, just talking as Pennsylvania, Jane?
I don't know if there's a particular policy. I mean, I've been very involved with the school board races, and one of our main concerns is uh, cyber charter school funding, and how it's an unfair funding formula and it's leading to problems everywhere. So, and that has become a political issue in our district in particular.
I see. Okay, so you're saying charter schools is a problem, and you're saying they should get rid of
School
charter
choice.
schools and
No, I'm
put
saying
on
the
board
funding
general-
formula is unfair. The courts have decided it's unfair. It is blatantly unfair. The amount of money that like my school district pays for children in the cyber charter school is astronomical. And there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. The disgraced senator that wrote the legislation for the cyber charter school is also the chair of the largest cyber charter school in the area. He also lives in my district, and
Oh, okay.
so he has the incentive to keep the funding formula unfair. So the amount of money they get per student is way out of line for the amount of money they spend. So they get like baseball trips, and they get gift cards and all the stuff that public school students don't get. Well,
they get as much funding as as a private school, but people don't actually have to chip in money to
yeah, I
pay
mean I would say they get more.
tuition.
They get more because the way that they do things, like if someone's like has an IEP, which they can have an IEP for like a lisp, and so they get 30 minutes of therapy, 30 every 30 days, like that counts as like special needs, and they get like double the funding formula. So it's very unfair. Like the courts have said it was unfair, but nobody has been able to fix it yet. So like that's an issue that I feel pretty strongly about as a parent with kids in public school. Yeah.
I guess we'll have to look into it a little bit more, but I know as far as like Philadelphia itself, charter schools has proven to be a little beneficial because of the sheer amount of people in public school in Philadelphia. It's kind of daunting and it's difficult to teach kids that don't want to learn, and it's tough to put your child who wants to learn with other kids who don't want to learn as much. And we recognize that a lot of the outcomes in education is not even what happens in a classroom. I think it's something like 60% of the outcomes is based on what happens at home, and what kind of socioeconomic stance that you're in at home. But as far as your county,
I mean, personally, I'm not against charter schools. I think charter schools are fine. My issue is that these kids are getting gift cards and computers and trinkets to tickets to major league sports, and my kids have to leave school an hour early because we don't have the busing to get them home with everybody else. So they have to come home an hour early, on alternating days. Like that's my issue.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fair, so sorry for that.
Rachel, you had a comment on this too?
Yeah, just a couple things. I did have my hand up, and then David was so eloquent, I took it down. But something like I feel like we couldn't have had better questions and better new people joining today, because this is the kind of stuff that that comes up and has to be rehashed over and over again. And a couple of points just from having been on a lot of calls and really worked through this question myself of like, well, what do you stand for? How can I be a part of something that doesn't have like a policy stance on this, or that I don't know that I agree with everything on? And it took me a while to realize like the current system is dysfunctional. And if you want to have different outcomes, you have to approach things differently. And so it's very hard to wrap your head around, especially in one conversation or one quick call, that we're talking about voting for people, not necessarily their party, but giving good candidates a vehicle by which to get further in the race and perhaps like access things that some of the larger candidates do have, a support structure, people to knock on doors, I don't want to say platforms, that's dangerous, but like a place, a venue, and to meet and speak. I really struggled with a lot of these same things, and you really do have to think about, again, the current system's not working, and this school choice is a great example of something where it's nice what Robert thinks and it's nice what I think, but the party doesn't necessarily have a stance on this, except if your area wasn't, or in the state maybe, wasn't so over here or over there on this issue, and we had more collaborative governance either on school board or at the state level where these decisions are moved, or the county level, these things would go away. So like a good example, or would improve, let's say. I struggled with like, do I want to join like an advocacy group for this cause or that cause? And it could be some of these hot button causes. I won't even name them, but they are advocacy groups, and that's wonderful and needed, but they don't actually run candidates. And the better way to make improvements across a variety of issues is to get better people into rooms where decisions are made. And so starting with local and school board and county and whatever, what is the forward party going to be? Join us and make it what you want it to be. It's very young. And so the more common sense, solution oriented people that join, give us credibility, spread our message, and we become what we on this call, everyone, we're not being told what to be, with some guardrails about values and principles and civil discourse. And it's a different concept. It's hard. It's really hard to wrap your head around. But once you do, you can imagine like the great classic example, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, right? They held up the infrastructure bill. They're two people. It doesn't take a lot of people to raise their hand and say, no, I'm not going to vote for that just the way it is. We need these, come together, make it better, more solutions. So if we had 10 forwardists in the PA legislature, they would be the voice of reason on issue after issue after issue after issue. So it's desirable to not be like, well, they're definitely going to vote for this. They're definitely going to caucus with them. That's kind of the point. And it is challenging. It takes a minute to get there. So I don't know if that helps, but I hope it does.
Spencer, you had your hand up and then down. Did you have something you wanted to comment on before I go to Joe and then David?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think it's been pretty well covered, but I was just going to suggest, and please, anyone on the call, like, interrupt me if I'm misrepresenting anything. My sense of it has been that there's sort of the forward party feels there's a primary role of some of the structural democracy reform and election reform issues. And so before you even get to the point where you're having these more fine-grained debates around specific issues, you need to have a real connection to your leadership. You need to have, more influence over your leadership. And if that has broken down to the extent that I think a lot of us feel it has, then that needs to be the first issue. That's sort of everything else gets minimized, with respect to that. So I think that's kind of been my sense of it, is we need to get this done before we even have successful conversations on some of those other issues.
Thanks, Spencer. And that makes a lot of sense. Joe? Joe, if you're muted, I don't know if you're talking because your camera's off, but I saw your hand was up. Here we go.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
All right. Yes. I'm an independent, and what I like about the Forward Party is the pragmatic views, neither left nor right, but you look at the whole issue and everything. And what I'm seeing is, we got the extremism on the right, and on the Democratic side is they have too many politicians that feel they own their elected position and basically are no show. Personally, I'm very disappointed in Senator Fetterman. Uh, since Trump's been in office, he's been a no-show, and we've got too many Democrats like that. Even though I agree with most of their policies, there's no action behind the empty rhetoric, and it's like all the Democrats do is complain. So I look for the Forward Party to kind of hold people accountable and make the public aware of these folks doing their job or not doing their job. I'm looking to get involved with the Forward Party, to make it, like Rachel was saying, it doesn't take a lot of people, 10 people in the Pennsylvania legislature, you can sway the balance and stuff. So I think that's something that we could work for. And that's what I would like to work for. And that's what I see in the future, just my 2 cents.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, we're all hearing some different representations. Grace and Jane, hopefully this is giving you a little bit of an idea of what the party is about and how people come at it from some different directions and different points of view. But you're hopefully getting an idea of how the party can be extremely relevant. David, and then Robert, you had your hand up too, but David.
I have a quick comment to Grace and a quick comment to Jane. Grace, with the way that you were talking, it sounded like you were basically trying to decide whether to buy into the Forward Party. And I want to stress that we don't expect you to sell your soul to us. It is totally okay to be someone who likes the Forward Party, but also votes for Republicans sometimes, and also votes for Democrats sometimes. We even endorse Republicans or Democrats sometimes if they align with our values. So this is not something where you have to make the Forward Party your whole identity. We're just looking for allies, people who like what we're about, are willing to spread the message of what we're trying to do, and find us other allies in the future. And then to Jane, I have no idea what the right answer is to the charter school funding issue. That's very complicated, but in all that you were saying, you listed a lot of facts. So I can't promise you that a Forward Party candidate would have the same position that you have on that issue, but one of the principles in our Forward Party candidate pledge is data-driven solutions. So I can at least tentatively promise you that a Forward Party candidate would base their decision on the kinds of facts and data that you are presenting on that issue.
Absolutely. And no one is rushing the sorority or the fraternity. You're allowed to talk to other people in other sororities and fraternities.
Thank you very much. This is Grace. Thank you very much. I'm still absorbing this. I'm still just trying to figure it out, but I appreciate that.
Robert.
Oh, well, I guess maybe another comment, I guess. So as a Forward Party, I think one of the issues that we have with the Democrats and Republicans is they use wedge issues to kind of shore up their own numbers, like immigration for the Democrats. So it kind of makes sense. You let more immigrants in, they will eventually vote for you, and then you have more power. For let's say the Republicans, or their attack on higher education is a huge problem, because guess what? They get all their voters from less education. They're basically kind of setting us back in the whole in the world. In fact, like it seems like Ireland and other UK universities are trying to take out all of our talent now, because we're just not friendly to higher education, PhDs. It's just kind of terrible, and I think that kind of power that both sides kind of try to wield against each other, it's just it seems like it's not good for society. It's not good for America, and we think, just when you think the little person's getting beat up, when the other side has such a huge advantage, and they're getting taken advantage of. I think the Ford party hopefully is kind of like a sense of reason and something you can kind of rely on to kind of fight against the huge, Goliath, that we can actually, be proud to be us Americans, just doing our American dream and whatnot. So at the risk of sounding like a stump speech, I'll just try to I try to leave it there.
This is great. Lots of great dialogue. So Brian, I'm going to pass the mic back to you as far as what official decorum is.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was great. I loved all the basically Q&A. Usually we end with that. Usually Christian would be hosting the call. He couldn't be here tonight because his work gets busy around primary day and different things are happening. So, I mean, I think primaries are a great topic tonight. One thing we should discuss, I mean, we'd love to talk about individual races in your area. If you have candidates or races that you're supporting, we talked about that school board race. But how we think about these things, how we find candidates, how we research them, what we're finding, because like 75% of these races, probably more, are not going to be contested. So there's a very good chance you're going to go tomorrow and have no choices to make. And that's a real shame. But then many people among us can't even vote tomorrow because they're not registered as a Democrat or Republican. It's like 15% of Pennsylvanians. And on a call the other night, we were talking, there were 4 of us on a small call, and no one was eligible to vote. No one was a registered Democrat or Republican. So all the taxes of those people are going to fund elections that they can't vote in. And that is a main priority for us. Updating the system so that that's not the way it is anymore. And our friends at Ballotpedia or Ballot PA have made a lot of progress this year. And there's a newfound push for that. I don't know if someone has the article handy. Maybe they can put it in the chat. But yeah, the bill to repeal closed primaries just came out of committee in the state house. So that's a good sign because I believe it passed the Senate a couple years ago. So it has real potential right now. So yeah, maybe tomorrow will be the last closed primary that Pennsylvania has. And then from next year on, maybe we'll be able to have independents choosing the ballot to vote with on primary day. So that would be really great.
And I'm willing to bet we would also have more voters that are actually registered as independents. I think the 15% would probably go up significantly.
Exactly, because it's 15% of people choosing to be independent when there's no advantage in doing so. All you're doing is taking away your options to vote on primary day, and still 15% of people do it. So you're exactly right. And another part of this, how it affects us, is that in this period, right, when we're recruiting candidates, say, we want to run a candidate in November. We can only recruit candidates that are not a registered Democrat or Republican as of a month ago. So now we can only recruit candidates from 15% of Pennsylvanians. Only 15% are eligible to run as a Ford Party candidate in November. So we lost 85%. So if that independent registration number jumped, like you said, from 15 to say doubled to 30, suddenly we have many more people that we can recruit from. So that's one way it affects us. But in general, we just believe we need to get more independent voices involved in our system, be it primary day or general election. Yeah, so does anyone have any comments on those two things? What they're seeing tomorrow or we expect to see tomorrow? Maybe they're being involved, maybe they're working the polls. Or have they seen anything about open primaries coming up? That's one of our main we're friendly with these other groups, Ballot PA, Independent Pennsylvanians that have been working very hard on this. The other group that we've had a lot of interaction with is Fair Districts PA, who they're very active tomorrow. They were looking for volunteers to work the polls on their behalf. Because the independent redistricting committee bill is coming up. So they're trying to get that on everyone's radar, and working on primary day is a great way to do that. So yeah, there a lot going on tomorrow.
Yeah, I would also just say like it can seem intimidating of like, what can I do? We're honestly calling in tonight and learning a little bit something that you didn't know about the Forward Party yesterday, or maybe thought differently or reinforced what you already thought. And then maybe you see something come across and you forward it to 5 friends, or you share it on your social media, and like really amplifying the message or talking to people who you believe are similar enough to you, meaning not extremely polarized on either side, that like, hey, there is another way, there is a better way, because people who are not overly politically engaged, they're just kind of going along, and then it's headline by headline and scandal by scandal, and one's worse than the other. But there is a lot of work being done, for those who want in and who want to help. And even just like I said, like, follow, and share, talk to your friends and family. What do they call it? Relational canvassing. The people you talk to are the people you're most likely going to influence. So things like that. I think, Brian, when you say like work the polls, like to me, is not someone politically, I might think I actually signed up with the county to work at the polls, but there's also people who will go and join a group or even on their own, but you may not be ready for that. But if you are, that's great. And just talk to people, either if there's lines while they're waiting, but also like on their way out, especially if you don't have a candidate you're trying to get votes for, people on their way out are much less guarded. And you can just say like, hey, what were you excited about, to come here and vote today? Or what do you wish was different? And then they're like, I'm from the Forward Party. And like, your first interaction with someone from Forward, then they'll see a news clip or they'll see something. And so we really are in the party building phase. You don't have to, again, sign your life over or anything. And some folks who are new today might not be ready for this tomorrow. But spreading the word and just kind of sharing the message that there are other ways. We as humans think this is how it is, this is how it has to be. And it's really up to us to change it. So any little bit helps.
Yeah, and last year we were asking people to get out on primary day and collect signatures. That we don't have that need this year, but next year it's going to be signature gathering time again. It's going to be, we hope to have state house candidates next year, and we'll be saying, this is the time we need volunteers, people passionate to get people on the ballot that are going to represent themselves and the Forward Party, represent the people around them, not some major party. Oh, great. Thank you, Robert, for sharing that.
Yeah, if for anybody that's not looking at the chat, Robert just shared, if you're in the Philadelphia area tomorrow, our friends from Ballot PA, Jen Bullock, Nancy Hanks, and David Thornborough will be interviewing people to ask how they feel about open primaries. So a great way to raise awareness about that and to engage with them. Because obviously, like we've been saying, open primaries is something that is very important. So Grace and Jane, when questions have been asked, like what does the Forward Party stand for? I hear you're getting some firsthand experience with the open part or the open primaries part. It's something that is very important, that I think universally any forwardist is going to say they want to have open primaries if it's something that doesn't exist in their state. And then Jane, you said, how does petitioning work for the Forward Party?
I can handle that.
Jump in.
So in a lot of ways, running as a third party in municipal elections is actually easier to get onto the ballot than with the major parties. Major parties only have like 3 weeks to get all their required signatures, but from the day they finish collecting theirs, actually the day after, until August 1st, third parties are collecting their signatures on something called nomination papers. We do have a higher number to collect, but we're not doing it. But the day we can start is mid-March, and we're doing it in the spring and early summer, whereas the major parties have to do it in basically wintertime. The only problem is when we get to offices with higher signature thresholds, like statewide offices, it's harder. But for many municipal elections, it's only a couple of dozen signatures you need to collect, and we have a couple of months to do so. So, yeah, so as Rachel said, the signature needs varies, but we have a lot of time to get it done.
Did you see her question if only independents can sign? I'll let you answer that, Ben.
We are allowed to collect signatures from any registered voter in Pennsylvania. And not only that, are the people we have collecting the signatures can be anybody as long as they submit to the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania, which means out of state people can in fact help us out and collect signatures if there is a need for that.
We had a very good time collecting signatures last election cycle. And Jane, you mentioned that you've done petitioning for your party. Is that your way of volunteering to do petitioning for us? That's so generous and kind.
If you have a candidate in my area, I would. I was the treasurer and friend of a state house candidate, who unfortunately were the minority party, so he lost. But you guys endorsed him. But I would absolutely petition for a forward party candidate.
Awesome, thank you. That's great to know. We'll keep that tucked away in our back pocket, and when the time comes, we will certainly circle back with you. All right, well, we're coming up on 9 o'clock. I think we had a nice lively discussion and welcomed some new names and faces, and hopefully we answered some questions. Before we break apart, is there anything anybody else wanted to make sure that we talked about, covered, or any other questions, especially Jane and Grace? Anything else you wanted to ask the group while we're all here together?
I thought we could share some links if you want to follow us on social media or talk on Slack.
Yeah, Rachel put both in the chat. So
okay.
If Grace and Jane, if you're not able to see that, we can certainly follow up with you. And I'll echo again what Rachel, and I'll throw it out there for myself too. If either of you want to, get with us, connect with us one-on-one and have, a little more, deeper, more granular conversation. I'm going to put my email in the chat for anybody too. And I know Rachel already did that. We're here to talk as long as you'd like. Great, Jane's already on Slack.
So I would just also point out we are a small but mighty group. So if you just forget in a couple days and you just email the Pennsylvania at forwardparty.com, a few of our communications guys, they will get it to the right person or someone in your area. If you're like, hey, I live in such and such and I'm looking to connect with somebody, like that is part of what we're doing behind the scenes. If you want to talk to somebody who you heard something from in this call, just if you remember their name or hey, the guy who said this or that, I have a question for him, we will probably be able to, you know, connect those dots. A couple of us curate the social media pages, like the Facebook page. If you're in my cohort and you aren't necessarily on some of the other social medias, you know, you could send a message. I think you can send a message in Messenger there and it will be received. And then I would also just mention for those who are new or those who haven't heard it before, the National Forward Party does have a few committees that are forming and developing across the nation for people who have certain, interest areas, let's say. And so I can name the 6. They're not all functioning, but I got one of our Pennsylvania guys, Gabe McGuire, great young man. He actually is the chair of the Young Forwardists, the National Young Forwardists Committee. So if you know someone who's, you know, studying political science and is frustrated with the current climate, spread the word. They can, you know, follow along or join and see what they're up to. The National Women's Committee, I happen to sit on the leadership team. We do have an event tomorrow on priorities. Again, the Women's Committee's priority statement is going to look different than the Pennsylvania priority statement. And then there's a Veterans Committee and their priority statement or their areas of focus will be different. And then there's the Black Voters Committee, AAPI, and I believe an LGBTQ+. I think those are the 6 committees, but if you go to forwardparty.com/committees, you'll see them. And if there's something very specific or more targeted that interests you, that's another point of access. You know, there's lots of different points of access or ways to get involved.
So I just spoke to Mario. So there's a Hispanic and Latino organization as well. I think that they're getting started pretty good. And I just joined the AAPI. So you might I might have some more news. Although that might be coming along a little slower, I guess, with the anti-DEI sentiment, which I can kind of understand, but you know, it's still good for kind of somewhat equity and justice to be out there. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed those types of things. Sorry. And one of the things that it's not like a DEI initiative, it is that we're trying to make a party that looks like the country and talking about not necessarily quotas or numbers, but just that less represented subsets of the population have a voice and have a way to be represented. So if we're trying to be a different party, you know, there are definitely not everyone's face is showing, but there are groups that are likely. We do pretty good in Pennsylvania on some, but then there's definitely some cohorts that are not represented, at least what I can tell. But again, don't judge a book by their cover or by people's names on Zoom. But, you know, we all know that there's a cohort that is usually more involved and some cohorts that are less involved. And like, what can we do to break down those structural barriers where everything is more accessible to anyone with an idea? So if that helps.
And Robert just put a few additional links in the chat for social media, Twitter, X, Facebook, and Instagram. And also volunteered for any conversations. He's got his email in there too. So I think everybody's heard. I think over half the people volunteered for one-on-one conversations. So hopefully, Grace and Jane, if you walk away, if anything from this call, you see that it's a very open, approachable, and eager to engage group.
Thank you.
Brian, anything else we want to cover before we wrap?
No, have a happy primary day tomorrow.
All right, everyone. Good stuff.
Thank you
And
very much.
if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
Classic, Ben.
Love it. Thanks.
Good night, everyone. Hope to see everybody again.
Cheers.